Good morning. It's past, so we'll go ahead and start. Begin by introducing ourselves. I'm Scott Matheson. I'm Reference and Government Documents Librarian at Lillian Goldman Law Library at Yale Law School. But I know just enough about the technology to get myself in trouble and cause problems. Sorry, Susan. And we're here today to talk about wireless policies and network lockdown. So if that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. We're both going to talk, kind of give you an example of some implementations that we have at our various schools, and then we hope to have kind of a discussion, a conversation about the pros and the cons. We can talk some about the technology if you want to, but also about the messages and the interesting implications of locking up computers or restricting access to students. So Deb Bernard from Capital is going to speak first, and here she is.
Good morning. My name is Deb Bernard. I'm the Director of Law Technology at Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. And I was going to tell you a little bit about our situation and the solutions we've arrived at for us. First, where is Capital with using wireless access points? We have wireless access points in all our classrooms, and we also have them in the student gathering areas and the study areas for meeting, greeting, team studies for the students. We also have access points that function a little bit different. The security works a little differently in the administrative and the faculty areas. And what do we do to secure wireless access points? Well, the first thing we do is anywhere that there's students, we use wired equivalent for privacy, which is WEP, and that encrypts the authentication that the students are going to be using. Primarily we use that because we're in a downtown location. We're an isolated building among other buildings to the left and right of us and behind and in front of us. So we want to make sure that what we send in our building stays in our building, and if it does go out, that it isn't usable. So we're using WEP. And the wireless access points provide the IP address for the students so that they have a connection once they're authenticated. We're using Radius servers to authenticate the students and provide certificates to them. So it's a double-layered security approach from our perspective for student use. For the faculty and staff, we just ask them to bring whatever it is that they want to use wireless access for on the floors that the faculty and staff are working in. And we'll take the MAC address off the wireless card, and we'll allow that that MAC address to go through the WAPs on those floors. So there's no authenticating. The wireless access point finds out what the address is that's requesting a connection, and it sends them through. That's the easiest thing to do. It also allows access for Palms with wireless. It allows access for Pocket PCs and other little units that may request it. Projectors that are asking for wireless. That's the method we use. Now for the students, it's different. For the students who are asking for access in the student commons areas or the student class or the classrooms, they need a laptop, and unfortunately, Windows XP Service Pack 1 minimum must be loaded on those laptops, which doesn't seem to be that much of an issue for our students because if the laptops came with a wireless card built in, they probably have XP built into them now too. And they have to use their username and password to get access, and they have to be able to obtain a certificate from the Radius server in order to get a connection that allows them out on the internet. How does this work? Well, the students bring a laptop, and the first thing when they turn on the wireless access on their laptop, the wireless access point tells it it's here and tries to get its attention. The students will try to connect to that laptop, and then they'll get a challenge for a username and password, which the wireless access point, the WAP, will take, and it'll send over to our Radius server. If the Radius server says that's okay, it takes the certificate, sends it through the WAP back to the laptop. Now the laptop has a certificate for wireless access. And the WAP now, seeing that the laptop has a certificate, will give it an IP address so it can get out to the internet or check email or any of the other functions the students want to do. That works in our study areas, that works in the commons areas, the cafeteria. What we found was our faculty were concerned that they didn't know our students were out on the internet. They weren't literally plugged into the desk like we have wired classrooms where they can do. They weren't aware that they were surfing the internet, and it concerned them. So, when we get to the classrooms, that whole process happens except for the very last part, the wireless access point. Once it knows that it's a student, it's authenticated them, it specifically denies them an IP address. So they have no wireless access in the classrooms currently. This doesn't prevent the students from getting wired internet access. They can still plug in the desk. They can still do ad hoc networking between the laptops. When we ask the professors what it is the students are doing in the classroom that upsets them so much about the access to the internet in the classrooms, the number one response is they're checking their email. Number two is they're browsing websites and disrupting other students with the graphics that keep coming up on the screen. And some of those pop-up graphics, as you all know, aren't the kind we really want other people seeing on our laptops. We had one who was being quite entrepreneurial in purchasing and selling products on eBay. One of the interesting ones that stopped fairly quickly was a person who was downloading songs. Unfortunately, they had the player set that once the song was downloaded, it began playing. We do have students that are using Twin and going to Lexis Westlaw and following the classroom sites in the classroom and making bookmarks and notations for later research. So there are some valid uses that we're aware of. It's just that there are other things going on that are disrupting to that student as well as to the students behind them and around them. When we ask the professors what they're doing, we get general impressions, and really the number one thing they complain about, that it has more to do with just using laptops in the classroom than it does wireless, is that they're playing solitaire. And some of this is impressions. The professor finds out that one student with a class of 110, one student is playing solitaire, and they get this focus on the student that isn't paying attention. And when I ask them later about it, I hear they're all playing solitaire. So one of the things we're going to be doing this fall is we're loading a software solution called SoftLink in our classrooms. It gives both wired and wireless control of the classroom to the professor. They can take screenshots of what the students are doing on their laptops. That all by itself should take care of the problem, I would think. But if there is a portion, and I've heard professors say this before, they get to a part where they say, put the screens down, I don't want you taking notes, I'll give you the notes. If there's a portion where they really want that, they can control the mouse, keyboard, and/or monitor using SoftLink. We'll also be able to have more information about what it is the students are using the laptops and the computers for. Yes? When they connect with the wireless access point, it'll give the address. If they connect hardwired, we give the addresses of the hardwired jacks to that podium for the instructor to install. No. It's up to the professors, but they really should be very forthcoming about what they're doing with that. So they're going to be doing this, and a lot of this is for information for us. As we move to using technology more in the classrooms, the professors will have more of an idea of the demands of the students as they try to meet those, as well as providing the technology that the professors need too for the classrooms. So what is the big deal with wireless access in the classrooms? This never came up when we had hardwired seats. Why is it an issue now? Well, the number one issue is just the lack of knowledge, the lack of control that the faculty feel they have when we have wireless access in the classrooms. They don't know that a student is on the internet like they know a student is on the internet when they see a Cat5 cable coming out of a laptop plugged into the desk. And I think that that unprepared for an answer that might be directly from Westlaw, kind of throws them. The students could circumvent the Socratic element of surprise if a professor asks a student on the spot about a case. One of the concerns a professor raised was that another student could instant message the student, type the entire answer in there, and that student would have time as they're getting up to read that answer before they give it to the professor. It seems slightly physically impossible to me, but it's always a possibility, and if it interferes with the classroom, then it's a problem. So we have to take that as a valid point. And the students could cheat on exams. Not all exams are soft exams in our school. Some are quizzes and other things that the professor may allow. And if the laptops are open, they could be pulling things off. There are simple solutions to that, such as shut your laptop off. But we need to find out what all the issues are so that we can start creating those solutions. Yes? Yes. Well, the wireless access point itself, the radius server knows what wireless access point is requesting the connection. I'll show you. It's 2 slides over. So why use wireless access points anyway? Expensive wiring makes wireless attractive to budget managers. Any of us who have called in an outside firm to pull electric and data know that there's a lot of expense as well as the inconvenience of pulling out down ceiling or jacking the floors. Wireless is just beautiful when it comes to one data point and access for 20-plus people. The students want it. We're recommending laptops to our students that come with wireless access. They want to be able to use it whenever they can. And functions like ExamSoft that we use in our building for laptop exams. Currently we use floppy disks to take the exams on for ExamSoft. The number one problem, if we have a problem with ExamSoft, it's usually with the quality of the floppy disk itself. So wireless access could take care of that, and ExamSoft is supporting wireless exams now. I must have skipped over a slide. 1 second. This is the slide you were referring to. We have dummy WAPs in our classrooms because the WAP signals from the libraries do encroach in our classrooms slightly. So in order to keep the WAPs from the other rooms from encroaching in our classrooms, we put the dummy WAPs, which have a stronger signal, and reach the students first and authenticate them and then deny them access. And that's why we have them in the rooms as well. And it's a lot cheaper than some of the other solutions. I heard someone else say that too. There are vendors who also provide that solution, but it's rather expensive. Wireless networking. We can do it, but should we? When I saw the title for this year's conference, I thought it was great, there and back again. And we already know how to do wireless now, but now we're coming back to, do we want to do wireless? Can we do wireless? Should we do wireless? What is it the internet access is being used for in the class? Does it aid in the teaching of law? And if it does, then where is it appropriate and when is it appropriate to turn those wireless access points on? And currently we have an all off or all on policy for our WAPs, but there may be something in between, and we need to do more research in our school to find out what that is and what our faculty are comfortable with. Yes.
Set up your firewalls to block access to sites that you don't want students to have access to based on the IP range of the segment of the network that they're on. For example, you can block AOL, instant messaging, or deny access to any site except for, let's say, Westlaw or wherever, if you're using Blackboard lock down where people can go on the internet rather than monitoring the PCs themselves.
The question for people who couldn't hear that was why use the SoftLink software that we're going to be using in the fall? Why not just create a firewall and allow access only to those places where people are allowed to go, such as Westlaw and Lexis and any place else the faculty agree? Well, one of the things is we don't have agreement about where it is the students can go, and there's no general consensus about what the students are doing. It may be perfectly acceptable to read email in certain classes if there's downtime. I'm not sure. The faculty haven't given me answers to that. All I hear from a few rather loud faculty are that they aren't paying attention and they know that they're doing something on the internet. And some of the firewall issues may not affect things like solitaire play. I don't know that they're playing solitaire. I know that we had a student that played solitaire. I've heard horror stories of someone playing a DVD movie. I don't know if that's true. It could have been a graphic that flashed on and off and someone thought it was a movie when they hit a web browser with a pop-up. I don't really know that that's true. So we're going back to the beginning and researching what it is that really is going on in our rooms to determine what we should do from there. Question in the back? We have two faculty who want to pilot the SoftLink program for us, and they will be announcing that if you connect to the internet during this class, you will also be connecting to SoftLink. That's what they promised us that they would do, yes. You do? Oh, okay. Okay, the vendor told me that wasn't, we haven't used it yet. Okay, the comment back here was there is a client side install, so the students will know that that's coming. Yes?
The other thing is that if people are watching movies and they're playing solitaire on their laptops, I just wouldn't plug in.
That's it.
And I'll sit there and I'll play, and I just won't be on the, for those things, you don't need the internet. So I don't find that as a solution to
That's very possible. And it may just come down to faculty taking control of their classroom. If you want your laptop open, you log into SoftLink or you turn it off, or we've decided this is a no laptop class, just shut it down and we'll take notes. Those are also solutions that are very easy to implement. You have a class back question?
Yeah, in terms of your SoftLink thing, professors are concerned about the surfing issue, but what about the students' privacy issues when those can get connected to the SoftLink? Has that been raised? And the second question is, in terms of cheating on exams, what's to deter the students from cheating now with the wired? I mean, doesn't the honor code thing cover that?
The honor code should cover it, yes. There's nothing. I think we've talked on Technoids quite a bit that if a student's determined to cheat, there's no software that'll stop that.
How about the privacy issue?
Well, if they're told ahead of time, this is a 2-hour class, if they're told that there's going to be screenshots of whatever you take, I feel comfortable that whatever they pull up is fair game.
We had wireless access for several years now, and originally when it came out, we had a fairly strong outcry about this issue of students using it during class. And kind of reached a real strong pitch, I would say, about a year or so ago. And then about 6 months later, we held a student forum where everybody could just have their say and talk about the topic. And what I expected to happen was the students really wanted to have access to all sorts of classrooms. But what surprised me was, I would say it was kind of 50-50. At least half were kind of put off by the notion that students were playing solitaire and it was kind of distracting them. So it was a bit of an eye-opener that students themselves wanted a little bit more regulation.
I think that's a great point, that sometimes peer intervention and peer supervision, that's what works for our honor code in a lot of places is the peer interaction will sometimes control an issue, especially if they know it's an issue. They may not even know it's an issue right now.
Let's move on to, I'm going to talk about another set of implementations, and then we'll have more discussion about kind of the general honor codes and classroom behavior and professors taking control of their class. That's good. We want that. Again, I'm Scott, and I'm a librarian in the library, but I work with the tech folks. Our tech folks are part of the library, and So I'm going to talk a little bit about something that we haven't talked about yet, which is computers that the school owns, computers that we have control over. And there's many of them, but for the most part, we have some OPAC terminals that are web-only and that are really locked down. We have some computers that we call research computers or reading room workstations. They're the computers that sit in the library that patrons would walk in and use, which have some interesting issues because we're open minimally to the public so that people who aren't affiliated and don't have logins, don't have network IDs, can actually come in and use these computers, and they need to be able to use our electronic resources. And then we have full workstations for the students, a traditional lab, computer classroom type setup. And then the wild card, the student laptops. The OPAC web-only stations are site kiosked with Windows 98. They're really locked down. They're older computers. No address bar, no floppy drives, pretty much the library website, the catalog, anything you can link to from there. But they're really not designed to be used as long-term computers. They're quick walk-up kiosks, and they're scattered physically throughout the library, in places where we don't watch them. In fact, one of the biggest problems we have with these is pieces of hardware wandering off. People will say, oh, I need a mouse, and off it goes. I've gotten away from that by etching the school's name into the mouse with a hot knife, but which makes them really unattractive, and nobody wants to steal them then. But these are really locked down. In our reading room, we have a cluster of 12 iMacs, which are fairly open. Because we do have those public patrons who come in, these are really open, and you can connect to network shares, you can burn CDs, we have a floppy drive we'll lend people. But every time they get logged out, either by the patron logging out or after an idle time of 5 minutes, the entire user directory structure is wiped out and replaced with a fresh image. And that's done locally on the machine with just a script. Mac OS is now a BSD variant, so we just have a shell script that runs and does that automatically. The other kind of security measure on this is physical security. They're all right next to the reference desk, so we can watch people using them and kind of see, oh, that's somebody we should keep an eye on, or, hey, they're walking out with our mouse and our keyboard. I did discover you can put tattle tape on the keyboards and the mice, and that will make the library sensors go off. So for computers in the library, that tends to keep our hardware attached. Then the full lab workstations are pretty standard, what you'd expect. Windows 98 machines, very new, but only open to law students. In fact, we had to go in and have a change made in the policy so that the librarians could actually log into the classroom computers to teach the classes. But they're limited by the campus Active Directory to law students only. The network policies are dictated by main campus largely. We have a central campus networking organization, and right now, wired connections for students, wired connections and wireless connections are the same as far as the networking folks are concerned, except that they do treat wireless still as a pilot project. We've had it for 2 or 3 years now, almost as long as I've been there, but it's still a pilot officially, so they're working on, I suspect there will be some added security at some point. But what they do right now is self-register MAC addresses, and then it's completely enforced by the routers whether or not you're allowed off campus. However, the loophole in this is that visitors who want to come in and use their laptops to, print an internal website, if they want to print if they're dying to print a catalog record from our web OPAC, they can do that because even visitors, drive-bys, are allowed onto the local network, and they can pull up a page from the web OPAC, and then they can send it to our Uniprint servers and go release the job if they're so inclined. The downside is they don't have any access to our electronic databases that the library is licensed because those are entirely hosted off campus. I don't think we have any locally hosted ones anymore. So pluses and minuses for our guests. The classrooms, when we underwent a renovation 3, 4, 5 years ago, when they renovated the classroom space, installed wireless jacks in almost all of the classrooms, and many of them one per seat in the larger lecture halls. There's no off switch on those. And so the wired jacks the students can plug in. The one thing is that then the students can see, or the professors can see, well, yes, there's a piece of Cat5 cable attached to that laptop. Those students must be on the web. Wireless now leaks into those classrooms. Some of them, it's intentionally we put access points in the classrooms. The newer ones, the one we just rebuilt, has its own dedicated access point. And students can surf. I've taught in the new classroom that has its very own very nice access point, and I've watched students wander off. I know then it's time for me to move along and talk about something interesting again. The upside to that, though, is I know a lot of them are using it for legitimate purposes, because when I say, go to this database and let's play around with it, all of a sudden we've reached our maximum number of simultaneous users, and then I can't get them to show them how to use it. So there's pluses and minuses to the wireless in the classroom, and there's been noise among our faculty. You may have seen them complaining about it in the New York Times. But for the most part, as far as I know, these are still the policies that we have for classroom wireless. Which brings us to this idea of levels of security. If there are computers that we own, so the WebOPAC terminals, the reading room workstations, lab computers, they're locked down more or less, because we pretty much want our people using them or our trusted users using them, and so they're pretty locked down. Student computers, we ensure that they're patched to a certain extent. The central campus folks won't let them on the network unless they have at least a couple rounds ago's worth of Windows patches. We could require some sort of control software. They could require some sort of control software, but we don't right now. Just some sort of credential that you are associated with the university. The classroom networks have their own switches. We could shut them off, but we don't. There's no big red switch yet. I think this is my politics would be interesting on that. So here's an idea. The more control or trust you have in a user or a machine, the more access you can give it, or the more open you can make the machine. We tend to go with trust. We err on the side of trusting our users, I think, which I think is a good thing. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So the issues which we've talked about, we've raised, surfing in class, the exam issue, the appropriateness issue, other resources that we have in the school that are abused or not abused or used by students either in class or out of class on our network from their home dial-up. Email lists, these sort of things have been going around on Technoids. You know, how do you have this list that you require all your law students to be on. How do you keep people from posting, the ad for their, new litter of puppies, free puppies or free kittens on the law student list? People don't want all that extra email. And then printing abuse, which is another session in itself, I think. There are solutions. We can certainly lock up any or all of these resources, and we do, to greater or lesser extents, depending on what they are. The bigger question is, does this solve anything? Yes, we can lock them down when they're in the law school. Yes, we can limit their Westlaw or Lexis printing. Yes, we can make them pay to print websites. Technically, we can do all these things. We can turn off their network access in class. But what message does that send to the students? What message does that send to the faculty? And what are the greater implications of kind of technologically enforcing what used to be social norms? Are locks a solution? We have students going out into the world of work, hopefully, that will need to understand, to a greater or lesser extent, how technology works and how to use their computers. If we lock everything up so that they can't ever make a mistake while they're in school, so that they can't ever do anything wrong, well, they're not necessarily going to learn a whole lot about how the technology works. It encourages helpless users. It encourages, oh, I have a strange dialog box on my screen that I don't recognize, I've never seen before, I have to call tech support. Instead of just reading it and saying, oh, it's saying that it can't find the network drive, okay. Also, this communicates a lack of trust to the students, which may be justified, but if it isn't, if they haven't proven themselves untrustworthy, why assume that they're not trustworthy? And that especially comes down to this professional values. In a professional school, we have codes of ethics. We expect people to act a certain way when they're in the profession. Why not expect them to act that way when they're law students? And part of this is that we have to tell the faculty or encourage the faculty that, and when we're acting as instructors ourselves, encourage some sort of code in the classroom that says, this is what's acceptable during class time and this is what's not acceptable. And I think there's a lot of peer enforcement, as there is in the professional world, there would be peer enforcement if we had those sort of ideas. Community values can promote and protect a community good, which would be your network access or your in-class use. There's a good there that people can follow along on Lexis or Westlaw. They can go read a news article about the case that's being discussed in a current events class. They can pull up an article in a seminar class and see that there are citations to other articles that might be of interest to them. So there's a good there, but there's also the potential, as we know, for abuse. Well, if we can enlist the help of the entire community to protect the value of the network access, perhaps we can leave it less locked up than we would otherwise. So here's an idea, and we can talk about this when we move into discussion, is that we have enough restrictions to keep them out of real trouble and prevent folks from being a detriment to other users on the network. We don't want a whole lot of viruses. We don't want worms. We don't want unpatched computers out there causing problems, not just for our local networks, but for the global network. But we want student computers especially to be open enough to allow for experimentation. I'm not suggesting that we unlock all our lab computers and have to go in and re-image them every night. That would be bad. But for student computers and for maybe some computers in the law school, leave them open enough that folks can go in and set up a billing program where folks can go in and play with the settings on their computer and see what it does. It's part of their professional skill set. The professors or teaching staff or library or computer staff have to set up the boundaries of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I don't know that I necessarily do a great job of that in the class that I teach. I would, next year, we'll go in and say, this is what's acceptable for you to do with your computer while you're in class, and this is not. And let's all stick to that. Our students are mostly adults. I think that they can handle that. But there needs to be a clear articulation of those expectations before we begin. And then peers can tap people on the shoulder and say, hey, and we've had students do this, say, it's distracting to me when you're playing Doom on your laptop while I'm trying to hear the torts lecture. I'm not getting the whole Hawkins v. McGee thing because I'm watching you blow up aliens or whatever. So let's have a chat about values and honor codes and things, but also about the nitty-gritty of locking things down and the privacy issues of doing screenshots and limiting other people. John.
I just want to sort of make a comment, and maybe I'm just missing everything, but it seems to me that we've got a possibility of a technological fix that we're grabbing onto to a human behavior that has been going on forever. I mean, what's the difference between two people playing hangman in class or doing a crossword puzzle in class? We can't come around and take away their papers and pencils. We're doing it on a computer. Okay, we can do something about that, but I really don't fundamentally see what the difference is, and I don't really buy into this. Let's do some technological fix on something.
I think that's the message I sent to Technoids that got me volunteered to do this, is that we didn't look to stationers in the 19th century to say, people are passing notes in our class. Can you write some sort of technology into your paper that won't allow it to be passed from student to student? Well, no. We said, don't pass notes in class. And then if we count them doing it, we grab the note and we read it to the class. That's the screenshot analogy is, maybe we don't put it up on the big monitor as somebody suggested on the list so for the whole class to see, but at least you can look and see not only what they're using the computer for good, but you can also look and see, well, these are the distractors and maybe what we would want to lock out. Okay.
We've heard the black and the white of it, turn it on, turn it off, but we haven't discussed about another solution or help to that is dial down the bandwidth. Make it painful for them to do downloads. Make it dial-up slow. One professor is full bandwidth. I mean, who's going to sit there and download music when it takes me 3 hours to get one MP3? I wouldn't do it in class. I'll wait to go do it at home.
Yep.
So it's convenience.
In fact, that's actually how our network office sometimes deals with when there are spikes in peer-to-peer activity. They just turn down those ports.
Instead of that big red switch, give the prof
A dial. Okay.
Yeah, I agree that I'm in favor of trust and leaving things open. But of course, you do have to take measures because you don't want to put your network at risk. So you want, you know, if the danger is that students are going to be spreading viruses measures against them. In our library, we have much of the same setup where I've got kiosk machines running Linux that students can't do anything on. We have other machines that are only supposed to be used for surfing the Westlaw and Lexis. Those are running 2000 and they can't go anywhere on those. Then there are computer lab machines where they can do pretty much anything, but the profile gets reset. Student laptops, they can go anywhere and do anything that they want. Now the problem in class, this is what we're talking about. Do we want to be Big Brother here, or do we want to have a professor at the beginning of the semester say, listen, I expect you not to be instant messaging your friends. I expect you to be paying attention, and if students do it, then they're going to do poorly on the exams and be crappy lawyers. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of how I feel about it.
Let's go to the back row on the end. Mm-hmm. Which says something about the culture of law school generally. I don't think that's just your law school. Do you want to chime in?
We just did that because we were on wireless in the fall. And our thought was, let's go to the faculty, find out what they think before we go to wireless. We did it for practical and political. We found a couple of things. Number one, the faculty that said not a problem, they're the ones who understand how to use computers. The ones who don't really want to have laptops or wireless in the classroom, they're the ones who don't understand. However, they know that people are playing Hangman or doing crossword. So we sort of circulated an email saying, what do you think? And we got back about probably a dozen responses. Most everybody says, hey, if they're playing solitaire or if they're playing cards or whatever, it's my problem, not theirs. So we kind of turned the table politically. We used that as sort of peer pressure. That, hey, we asked the faculty, you know, this is their idea, let's go wireless. We kind of made it their idea.
You want to comment? Well, and Deb made a good comment when we were kind of preparing last night that it's the political question with the students, at least, is once you give them something, it's very hard to take it away. So,
Right, and I think that's why we're doing the links system in the beginning, because we don't have our faculty buy-in. I can't turn on wireless in the classrooms, and yet I know it's what the students want. They're pushing me from behind this way, and the faculty are pushing in front this way. And so this is that middle ground where I can say, look, I really think a lot of your fears are just that. It's something new, and it's just fear. And I want to show them what it can do. So we've got these pilot faculty who are willing to move forward. And I think from there we can move forward with it.
let's go to the very back and then over here.
Right. They need to not be naive, right, because ad hoc networks with the laptops themselves, The wireless cards are coming out with broadband connections now. They're very fast. So there are other ways the students will get it if we don't provide it. We want to be the one to be in the front seat with that.
Next 3 years, so we can have wireless access, right? Really important. Right now, it's literally like 1 year. Wireless LANs are going to be all those.
Over here.
I agree.
That's another thing to keep in mind. Like many other schools, we're going to a mandatory laptop policy. And so, on one hand, you're telling students, you got to have a laptop to come to school. On the other hand, you're saying, well, don't use it in my class.
About 3 years ago, we put in our first wireless. We did consult our faculty. We had about a 60-40 split in favor of going ahead and doing it. But it took about 3 years for the critical mass to occur where there was so much use going on where this really became a hot issue. And I guess I wanted to sort of fight against the notion of using technology whenever you can. Just use technology some ways to find a solution when perhaps ethical or social reasons find better analogies. And I would rather engage our SBA, our Student Bar Association, and say, can you help us solve this rather than implement some kind of overhead that requires staffing and everything else. And I'm doing a program this afternoon on cyber-ethics, so I'm obviously thrilled that a lot of this does boil down to kind of social norms and ethical kind of solutions rather than pure technology.
Well, and it's not just the extra staff time. It's not an insubstantial piece of overhead. You were talking about you had priced one of the vendor solutions, and it's
It was $30,000 to set up a database that would allow the students to have wireless every time except when they were in class. And then after 60 users, we had to double the server capacity. So it was rather pricey, and we just couldn't afford that. So we came up with the dummy WAP idea.
that's a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
Folks that were using kind of the dummy access point strategy, an access point antenna, you really got to poke at that and understand exactly what your range is. I mean, they vary from these great big long circles around it to kind of cones and funnels. And I think it's critical to sort of map out that range. I would be very worried that you're blocking out a lot of valuable customers that you end up having to send staff after the fix, only to discover that your dummy access point is in fact what's causing them not to get connected. So, I mean,
Right.
I guess I'm
And then we get it just perfect, and we get a cloudy day, and it's different. I mean, weather does affect the wireless access to a certain degree, so it isn't a science. And as much as we'd like to believe, we did run around with our little connectors and check the strength signal, and we did the best we could. But basically, the goal was to block it in the class. So we may have knocked other people out from wireless.
Back there.
Yes. No, that's for faculty and staff, and we just ask them to bring us the unit that they want on the wireless, and we'll catch it off.
Ours is self-registration.
His
Once
is-
they have their net ID, they go on to it. And in fact, now we're making them do it twice because they have to go on once for their wired and once for their wireless. And it does just grab it in automatically. I assume that their database associates it with their net ID and doesn't just turn it on or off. But they're not part of the law school, so we've had problems getting that data back out. Yeah, in fact, our folks just turned off all of the student accounts. They unregistered everybody. So anybody who's still around for the summer or who's coming back next fall will have to go through that process again, which is not onerous. It's a login and password, but it's another step. And we'll be helping. That'll be our first week of September. Yep. Yep. Or if you happen to have two, boy, if you're faculty or staff, that confuses them. Susan, do you want to speak to that? It's good for the year. And that's our issue. Yeah. With the having them completely tied to the network, the net ID, if you're not affiliated, you don't.
At Emory, we're going to be implementing wireless, hopefully. The planets align this fall. But I was going to say, it seems to me that you really do need to go to the faculty. You have to involve the faculty. But I would go further than that. I would say you have to go in there with the idea that you are going to lead them to the conclusion that this is a classroom decorum issue. That you don't go in passively. You go in having marshaled your arguments, having surveyed those faculty who are computer savvy, who already have wireless at their house and love it, who use wireless at Starbucks, and you go in with the idea that it is going to be a giant pain in the tail, especially if you don't have access to your closets, which we don't, where I am, to implement anything other than all wireless everywhere, and you all will now have to walk the aisles and double check that people are doing what you want them to be doing in the classroom. That requires the support of your dean when you go into that meeting. Because at some point, you're going to turn around and you're going to say, right? And so you've got to do a little bit of homework, but it leads to a very pleasant meeting. You know, and you walk out of it and they've arrived at a consensus, a guided consensus, that saves you tons of money and doesn't mean you have to hire a new network admin just to manage the wireless issues. And I'm so sympathetic to what Mark is saying, this whole issue of accidentally cutting off access to people. I never want to have that conversation. You know, it's the I paid $30,000 a year conversation we've all had. I never want to have that conversation. And so I think if you go into the faculty with that approach, you'll maybe have some success.
You raised a good point about this. Why have technology and wireless access in the classroom just for the sake of having it? If a professor is not using technology in his classroom, why do they need to have network access? Their laptop should be for taking notes. And why not just turn off network access for that class? And as far as file sharing, we don't enable file sharing on our networks, simply for bandwidth issues. And AIM was disabled for a while. There was so much student outcry that we had to turn it off. I mean, what about that? Why should students, by default, have network access if it's not necessary for class?
Over here.
I was just saying that the students that I've talked to said that quite a few of them do use it for, they'll pull down the case, during class. Some of them take notes even together online, so that the students can still make an educational, beneficial use of the access, even when the professor isn't using it.
Back here? And hard, depending on the structure of your tech folks and where they fall in the law school, can be very
Usually it's easier if a faculty member says that to a faculty member and not the tech department saying, we're putting in this wireless access in. If you had a boring class, guess what? It's just going to be that much worse. So.
That's interesting because the management software that we have, it tells me how many students are accessing the network within each classroom. Then I'll pull up our class schedule to see which faculty have the peaks.
And it's all the legal research people, the people who are using Blackboard really heavily, right? The students are going to the class-related sites.
But the question about how to talk with, I think Ben had a very good point. You need to talk to your faculty. When we installed wireless 2 years ago, I talked to a lot of the faculty, and one of our distinguished faculty members said, whatever gets the students into the classroom is a good thing, and at that point it's my job to get their attention. And that won the argument with the dean, and it's won the argument ever since for the last 2 years. The only problems I have are with adjunct faculty who weren't in on that original decision or consensus. And I've had adjunct faculty come to me and say that they read on some law prof list that I can cut off individual students and asking me to do that, and but having to explain how that's too much work. I can't do that.
Back over there.
I'm a little bit of a dissenting voice about this consulting faculty. If we had consulted the faculty on any of the technological changes, that wouldn't have happened. We didn't consult the faculty. We implemented wireless 2 or 3 years ago. And about a year later, the faculty became aware that we had implemented wireless. We had long discussions about what we could do about this misuse of wireless in the classrooms. And what we ended up doing was passing a statement of what I believe is inherent authority on the part of the professor anyway. You can control the use of computers in your classroom. You can tell students not to use them at all. You can tell students what they can do with them. You can tell students they can do anything they want with them. Each individual professor has that inherent authority, but we have it now in an explicit statement. And the dissatisfaction with that technology has gone away from the faculty. We simply do not have the dissatisfaction anymore. We've had wireless about 3 years.
And was it easy to get them to not to get to the point where they were willing to articulate that in their syllabus or in their class?
Talked it to death, and we have about 3 or 4 different variations of the statement, starting with extremely explicit, and we are now down to, I think, 1 or 2 sentences that say faculty can control computers.
And is that something that you guys drafted in conjunction with the faculty, or you drafted it and presented to them as options?
It was entirely faculty driven, and the whole discussion, probably 3 faculty meetings was taken up with this discussion. It was not terribly painful getting there, but you know, if we had discussed it ahead of time, we would never have made the wireless change, and the wireless change has been extremely popular with our students, and now getting really popular with our faculty.
So, and once it's made explicit by the faculty or the teaching staff, then you're back to this.
Yeah.
Great.
Stephanie.
One thing that concerns me about using technological solutions to control these families are increasing reliance on solutions like these. And this is the world in some sense. It's not just what we're providing. It's people generally now having the ability to access all the stuff that used to be just at home, just on the desktop, anywhere they go. People are doing phone calls within the day, like their child was sick, within their class. All that stuff is coming in. And if they say, well, we're going to control it in the classroom,
You said you had Perfigo up in the back. Are you guys using the control aspects of that? Over here?
Yes, we have wireless throughout the building. Don't have an on-off switch. Some faculty would like to have an on-off switch, and we are in the process of testing two software, Silicon Chalk and Soft Secure, to allow faculty to literally turn off the applications in their classroom that they don't want students using. Yeah.
So are we going to put, copper cladding around the buildings?
Well, I just wanted to echo that comment. When we needed to sell this to our faculty, and the way we did it was, since we did not have wireless networks, we just used all the road networks that were already available everywhere. In the room that the faculty met for this meeting, there were 4 different wireless signals.
Right.
And then, of course, even if you're outside of a Wi-Fi range currently, you can use your cell phone as a wireless modem. Because anybody that has a Bluetooth cell phone, Bluetooth computer, can just get on the internet any place. And then, within a few months, Wi-Fi is going away, and we're all going to have WiMAX with 20 to 30-mile ranges.
Right.
So, this is the question that we presented to the faculty was not whether students should have wireless access in the classroom, because they do. The only question was whether we should provide it in a controlled environment, or whether the students should just simply have access to the signals that are already out there. And it turned out that if we provide it, it's less of a bandwidth demand in our network than if the students have to go to an outside wireless access point and then come back onto campus to obtain materials. They're using up all the bandwidth.
Well, if they're using an external
network,
and coming back in.
It's greater demand on our bandwidth because they're coming back in.
Right. And that's our goal, is to get the faculty comfortable with the wireless access so that we can implement it in all classrooms and turn it on, because currently we're not allowed to turn it on. So ours is a stopgap measure to assure them that this is going to be an academic function, and then to turn it on.
And it sounds like that maybe getting the faculty on board with this kind of laying down the law and providing them even with some samples of how they might do that might be the way to go about it. One more quick in the back, and then I think we're out of time.
Part of the discussion has gone into requiring laptops. So, one of the arguments is they include it in ways, and didn't afford one technologically equal with their peers. We don't provide wireless. I mean, we can say in the same kind of unequal setting, but people can afford to be employees to get the external networks and have access to people who can't afford them to not have access. And we may one, but if we don't provide the wireless, and then the only people who can get it through, their phones or their people or something extra that they have to buy. The argument for making, that I've heard a lot of making that about your card is then you allow people to purchase them in a way in which they be able to afford it.
So it's a digital divide social justice issue.
That law was changed from 2 or 3 years ago. Now in the code, that computer, because the code of things, no longer has to be required. They can do it on the financial aid now.
Well, but as a theoretical thought process, do we then need to consider, well, if we don't provide it, are we going to set up that same? But then I come to the belief system that people can't do it. Well, we can provide it outside. Right, so I have to go sit down and call them to do my class.
One more quick in the back, and people are packing up, and we'll go.
I just want to make one comment. You can always set up your security so that you block out those external wireless network access into your facility if you have the funds to do that. If you have people that are experiencing the business
Shield the room. Do what NSA does.
Put up an iron curtain.
Put up an iron curtain. Exactly.
Have a great lunch. Thank you.
How about I keep talking on the list?